I have been asked in the years since whether I knew he would come. The honest answer is no. The honest answer is that I stood in the vestry of St. Gideon's Church on the 14th of September with my wedding gloves on, the buttonhole flowers in my hands that somebody's maid had pressed on me because there was nothing else to do with them, and I did not know anything except that Mr. Aldous Fenn had not arrived, that it had been 37 minutes past the hour, and that the guests on the other side of the vestry door had stopped murmuring and started being quiet in the particular way that means everyone has understood something that nobody is willing to say aloud. Let me explain how I came to be in that vestry. My name was, before that September, Clara Whitmore. I am the second daughter of a land-poor family in Dorset. We had a house and a name and very little else, which is a common enough circumstance for second daughters, and one I had made my peace with early. I was not formed for self-pity. I was formed for accounts and practicality and the management of things, which is what you are formed for when there is no money to waste on decorating yourself and a great deal of daily life to organize. I was not, by the standards of the season, considered especially marriageable, and I was 27, which is the age at which the season stops mentioning your name at all. I had met Mr. Aldous Fenn at my cousin's home in February. He was a solicitor of moderate standing and considerable personal charm, and he had the gift, which I was too grateful and perhaps too lonely to see clearly at the time, of paying attention in a way that felt like distinction. He asked me questions. He remembered my answers. He wrote to me. He proposed in June, with a sincerity that I took to be what it presented itself as, and I said yes. The wedding was arranged for September. My mother altered her own dress for me. My sister made the flowers. I did not have particular illusions about the occasion. I had chosen a practical life with a competent man, and I thought I was satisfied. I see now that what I was relieved to have the question settled, to have an arrangement, to no longer be the second daughter at 27 who was not mentioned. He did not come. The vicar, Mr. Halloran, came into the vestry at 38 minutes past and said there had been no word. My sister held my hand. My mother sat very straight and said nothing at all, which was worse. The guests, I was told afterward, had mostly assumed an accident, a coach delay, a horse, and several of the kinder ones had said so loudly in the nave to fill the silence. At 42 minutes past, the outer door of the vestry opened. I will describe him because I think you deserve the full picture. He was tall, with the look of a man who does not explain himself and has never found it necessary to. Dark coat, plainly but well cut, no flower in his buttonhole. He had not, I learned afterward, expected to have one, and had not thought to get one, and neither of these things seemed to concern him at all. He was the Duke of Ashford, though I did not know that when he walked in, because nobody had told me that was who was standing in my vestry, and because I was, in that moment, not at my most receptive to introductions. He closed the outer door behind him. He looked at me for a moment with the directness of someone who has assessed a situation and made a decision about it, and then he said, without preamble, "Mr. Fenn is in Grosvenor Square. He has been there since Tuesday with a Miss Hartington, who is the daughter of his firm's principal client. I was told by my solicitor's clerk, who thought I ought to know, because I am your neighbor in Dorset and my household staff had mentioned the preparations. I drove through the night." I said, after a moment, "You drove through the night?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I thought if you were going to stand in a church for 40 minutes, someone who knew the reason ought to at least be in the room." There was a silence. My sister, to her credit, did not say anything. My mother had gone very still. I said, "You don't know me," he said. "I know you manage the accounts for the Whitmore estate because my head man has mentioned the improvement in the drainage correspondence since you took it over. I know you walk the east path on Tuesdays and don't carry a parasol. I know your sister's name is Anne, and that you argued with the Dorset Land Committee about the road improvement plan for 45 minutes in August, and were right about all of it." A pause. I have paid more attention than was apparent. I looked at him for a long time. He stood and let me look. I said, "I am about to be publicly humiliated." He said, "Yes, that is already happening. The question is what happens immediately after." I said, "What are you proposing?" He said, "I am asking you to come out of this vestry on my arm. That is all I am asking right now. You can decide everything else later, when you have had time to think and are not standing in a wedding dress in a room that is not where you expected to be." I looked at my sister, who had tears on her face and was nodding very slightly. I looked at my hands, which were still holding the buttonhole flowers, which were now faintly crushed. I said, "All right. We walked out of the vestry together. He offered me his arm and I took it, and we walked into the nave of St. Gideon's Church past 60 people who had been waiting variously to offer sympathy or absorb scandal and had received neither. The Duke of Ashford walked me out of the church and put me in his carriage and sent word to my family and drove me home. He called the following Thursday and the Thursday after that. The third Thursday he asked if he might call more frequently. I said, "You may, on the condition that you are honest with me. I have had enough of men who present themselves as one thing and are another." He said, "I am tediously consistent. Ask my secretary." His secretary, when I later asked him, said his grace means what he says, always. It is occasionally inconvenient. He proposed in December. He said he had been thinking about it since February, which I did not entirely believe, but which was, he later showed me, true. There was a letter in his correspondence from his estate man, dated February 14th, mentioning Miss Whitmore's drainage arguments and his grace's apparent interest in further discussion. He had not known how to proceed. Then September had happened. I said yes. We married the following April. I wore the same dress, my mother's dress, altered. I asked the same vicar. I carried the same flowers. I was there 40 minutes early. He said afterward that he had arrived at 7 in the morning and had sat in his carriage for 3 hours reading correspondence so as not to arrive at the church before the door opened. I said, "You could have told me." He said, "I didn't want you to feel obligated to arrive early on my account. This is who he is. This is exactly who he is." I did not know it in September, standing in the vestry with crushed flowers in my hands. But I know it now, and I have never spent a moment wishing the morning had gone otherwise. Mr. Fenn married the Hartington girl in November. I do not know what became of them. I do not think about it. I think about the man who drove through the night because someone who knew the reason ought to at least be in the room.